Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson. This program is aimed at English learners, so we speak a little slower and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today on the program, you will hear from Katie Weaver and Anna Mateo. Later, Steve Ember will present our American history series, The Making of a Nation. But first, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg announced he is donating $1.8 billion to his former school, Johns Hopkins University, on Sunday. Bloomberg said he is doing so to increase financial aid for low- and middle-income students at the university in Baltimore, Maryland. The Chronicle of Higher Education says it is the largest financial gift ever to any education institution in the world. The largest donation to higher education had been a gift from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In 1999, the private organization launched the Gates Millennium Scholars Program with a $1 billion commitment over 20 years. The next largest donation listed went to Vedanta University in Connaught, India. The Anil Agarwal Foundation spent about $1 billion to help establish the school in 2006. Johns Hopkins representatives said the gift will make it possible for the school to remove student loans as part of its financial aid offerings starting next fall. Instead, the university will offer students scholarships that do not have to be repaid. University President Ronald Daniels called the gift unprecedented and transformative. He said Bloomberg's donation will let the school permanently follow need-blind admissions policy. Being need-blind means Johns Hopkins will admit the best students regardless of their ability to pay for their education. Daniels noted that the school was established in 1876 by a $7 million gift from Baltimore businessman Johns Hopkins. At the time, that gift was the largest of its kind. Bloomberg said he expects the money will permit Hopkins to offer larger scholarships and reduce debt for students. He said in a statement, "America is at its best when we reward people based on the quality of their work, not the size of their pocketbook. Denying students entry to a college based on their ability to pay undermines equal opportunity." Bloomberg completed his study at Hopkins in 1964. He paid for his study with a student loan and a job at the school. At the age of 76, Bloomberg is one of the world's wealthiest people. He created the international finance service and media company Bloomberg. He also served as New York mayor from 2002 to 2013 and has considered running for president for years. This includes in 2020.
A new United Nations report finds that opium poppy cultivation in Afghanistan is now 20% lower than it was in 2017. The report noted a lack of rainfall and falling prices of dry opium across the country. The dried latex form of the poppy plant can be used to make heroin and other opioid drugs. Afghanistan is the world's leading producer of opium poppy. The new report said the total land area for growing the plants decreased to 263,000 hectares from an estimated 328,000 hectares in 2017. Yet, it was still the second highest measurement for Afghanistan since the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, began keeping records in 1994. The potential opium production fell by 29% to 6,400 tons from an estimated 9,000 tons in 2017. The UNODC country representative, Mark Colhoun, told reporters in Kabul the prices of dry opium at harvest time fell to $94 per kilogram. That represents the lowest prices since 2004, he said. The decreases were mainly a result of the lack of rainfall during the past year, he added. The drought mainly affected northern and western Afghanistan. Colhoun explained that the amount of land used to grow opium in all of Afghanistan is still the highest ever recorded. This is a clear challenge to security and safety for the region and beyond. It is also a threat to all countries to and through which these drugs are sold, he said. Colhoun warned that more high-quality, low-cost heroin will reach buyers around the world. This will lead to increased use of the drug and other problems. The high levels of opium poppy cultivation growth and illegal trafficking of opiates will fuel unrest and increase funding to terrorist groups in Afghanistan, he said. Colhoun said there is no one explanation for the continuing high levels of opium cultivation in Afghanistan, but he said it is related to political unrest, lack of government control and security, as well as corruption. I'm Katie Weaver.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health and Lifestyle Report. What used to be an outdoor activity for only extreme foodies is now becoming more and more popular in many parts of the United States. I am talking about mushroom hunting. Mushroom hunters, also called foragers, spend hours, even days, in wooded areas searching for wild mushrooms. Dennis Aida lives in New York City. He has been a mushroom hunter since the 1980s. He first became interested in them while exploring the Appalachian Trail in the 1970s. As he hiked, he began noticing mushrooms and other wild edibles. So he decided to try foraging for mushrooms. Aida says mushroom foraging changed his relationship with the environment. When hiking, he says, he would walk quickly and not see much of the plants and trees around him. However, to find mushrooms, you must walk slowly.
By looking for mushrooms, you tend to slow up a little bit. You get a chance to see the birds, you get a chance to see trees, the shrubs, little animal life and everything.
So it is necessary to pay close attention to the details on trees and on the ground. But this presents its own problem. Mushroom foragers, with their heads turned downward, can easily get lost in the woods. In the States, people have died after spending all night unprotected in the cold woods, lost while hunting mushrooms. So what makes people go out for hours and hours searching for a fungus? Mushrooms, after all, are often found growing from dead and dying things in the woods. Well, some people just love mushrooms. They love finding them in unexpected places. They love cooking them, and they love eating them. Many restaurants buy different kinds of mushrooms for the meals they prepare, so foraging can be profitable. Mushrooms grow very well in wet climates. Some countries in Europe, parts of Russia, Japan, and Iran are known for having different mushrooms, as well as a food culture based on mushroom foraging. Dennis Aida has traveled to Canada, Italy, India, Nepal, and Argentina in search of mushrooms. He says some cultures seem to like them more than others.
When you go to Italy, not only do you go mushroom hunting, but of course there's great food there, and they cook with mushrooms in a very big way. Italians, they love mushrooms. Most of the Europeans eat mushrooms. Many of the Asians do, but there are certain cultures that don't.
Experts say eating mushrooms can be good for your health. Mushrooms contain the mineral selenium. This mineral helps the liver to work properly. The mineral also helps to prevent infection in the body and may decrease the growth of cancerous tumors. Most fruits and vegetables do not have selenium. Mushrooms may also help you to lose weight. They are high in fiber, some more than others. So they can make us feel fuller for long periods. As a result, we eat less. So mushrooms are good for you and can be tasty. But foraging on your own can be dangerous. For those who have never been mushroom hunting but want to start, Dennis Aida has one important suggestion. Do not do it alone.
Well, they should join a club, a mushroom club. If there's a club in your area, that's the best way to learn about which mushrooms to eat. You go on walks, and then you start to learn which books to buy. You buy a few mushroom books with some pictures, and that's the best way to do it.
With mushroom foraging, it is important to know that some mushrooms can kill you. The online Encyclopedia Britannica lists the most deadly ones and gives pictures of each. One thing that makes some mushrooms so deadly is that they look like perfectly common edible mushrooms. Take, for example, the destroying angel's mushroom. Encyclopedia Britannica describes them as all white and very poisonous. But they look just like the edible button and meadow mushrooms, so they are sometimes collected and eaten by mistake. The death cap is perhaps the deadliest of all mushrooms. Found throughout Europe, it looks similar to two types of edible mushrooms. Another thing that makes poisonous mushrooms so deadly is that signs of poisoning can take a long time to show, or they show themselves and then go away. People think that they are in good health and fail to get proper treatment. Sometimes the signs are similar to influenza, so mushroom poisoning can easily be misdiagnosed. For whatever reason, if left untreated, mushroom poisoning can result in serious health conditions like kidney failure or even death. That is why Aida warns beginners to go out foraging with experienced mushroom hunters.
As I say, it's very dangerous. People really should not go out to the woods and come back with things and start eating mushrooms. No. It could be a deadly endeavor.
And that's the Health and Lifestyle Report. I'm Anna Mateo.
Today on The Making of a Nation, we tell about relations between the American colonies and Britain after the French and Indian War. Here is Steve Ember.
The French and Indian War was one part of a world conflict between Britain and France. It was fought to decide which of the two powerful nations would control North America. The British defeated the French in North America in 1763. As a result, the British took control of lands that had been claimed by France. Britain was now responsible for almost 2 million people in the 13 American colonies and 60,000 French-speaking people in Canada. In addition to political and economic responsibilities, Britain had to protect all these colonists from different groups of Indians. This would cost a lot of money. Britain already had spent a lot sending troops and material to the colonies to fight the French and Indian War. It believed the American colonists should now help pay for that war. The colonists in North America in 1763 were very different from those who had settled there more than 100 years before. They had different ideas. They had come to consider their colonial legislatures as smaller but similar to the British Parliament in London. These smaller parliaments had helped the colonists rule themselves for more than 100 years. The colonists began to feel that their legislatures should also have the powers that the British Parliament had. The situation in England had changed as well. In the year 1707, the nation became officially known as Great Britain. Its king no longer controlled the Parliament as he had in the early 1600s. Then the king decided all major questions, especially those concerning the colonies. But power had moved from the king to the Parliament. It was the legislature that decided major questions by the time of the French and Indian War, especially the power to tax. The parliaments in the colonies began to believe that they too should have this power of taxation. The first English settlers in America considered themselves citizens of England. They had made a dangerous trip across the ocean to create a little England in a new place, to trade with the mother country, and to spread their religion. By 1763, however, the colonists thought of themselves as Americans. Many of their families had been in North America for 50 to 100 years. They had cleared the land, built homes, fought Indians, and made lives for themselves far away from Britain. They had different everyday concerns than the people in Britain. Their way of life was different too. They did not want anyone else to tell them how to govern themselves. The people in Britain, however, still believed that the purpose of a colony was to serve the mother country. The government treated British citizens in the colonies differently from those at home. It demanded special taxes from the colonists. It also ordered them to feed British troops and let them live in their houses. Britain claimed that the soldiers were in the colonies to protect the people. But the people asked, "Protect us from whom?" As long as the French were nearby in Canada, the colonists needed the protection of the British Army and Navy. After the French were gone, following their defeat in the French and Indian War, the colonists felt they no longer needed British military protection. The British government demanded that the colonists pay higher and higher taxes. One reason was that the government wanted to show the colonists that it was in control. Another reason was that Britain was having money problems. Foreign wars had left the country with big debts. The British thought the colonists should help pay some of these debts, especially those resulting from the French and Indian War. The American colonists might have agreed, but they wanted to have a say in the decision. They wanted the right to vote about their own taxes, like the people living in Britain. But no colonists were permitted to serve in the British Parliament, so they protested that they were being taxed without being represented. In 1764, the British Parliament approved the Sugar Act. This legislation set taxes on sugar, coffee, some wines, and other products imported to America in large amounts. It increased the taxes on European products sent to the colonies through Britain. The British government also approved new measures aimed at enforcing all trade laws. And it decided to restrict the production of paper money in the colonies. The American colonists opposed all these new laws. Yet they could not agree about how to resist. Colonial assemblies approved protests against the laws, but the protests were all different and had no real effect. Business groups attempted to organize boycotts of goods, but these were not very successful until the British government approved another tax in 1765, a tax on stamps. The Stamp Act probably angered more American colonists than any earlier tax. Under this law, the colonists had to buy a British stamp for every piece of printed paper they used. That meant they would be taxed for every piece of newspaper, every document, even every playing card. The colonists refused to pay. Colonial assemblies approved resolutions suggesting that the British Parliament had no right to tax the colonies at all. Some colonists were so angry that they attacked British stamp agents. Historians say the main reason the colonists were angry was because Britain had rejected the idea of no taxation without representation. Almost no colonist wanted to be independent of Britain at that time, yet all of them valued their rights as British citizens and the idea of local self-rule. They considered the Stamp Act to be the worst in a series of violations of these rights. The American colonists refused to obey the Stamp Act. They also refused to buy British goods. Almost 1,000 store owners signed non-importation agreements. This cost British businessmen so much money that they demanded that the government cancel the Stamp Act. Parliament finally canceled the law in 1766. The colonists immediately ended their ban on British goods. But the same day that Parliament ended the Stamp Act, it approved the Declaratory Act. This was a statement saying the colonies existed to serve Britain, and that Britain could approve any law it wanted. Many American colonists considered this statement to be illegal. Historians say this shows just how separated the colonies had become from Britain. Colonial assemblies were able to approve their own laws, but only with the permission of the British Parliament. The colonists, however, considered the work of their assemblies as their own form of self-rule. Britain canceled the Stamp Act, but did not stop demanding taxes. In 1767, Parliament approved a series of new taxes called the Townshend Acts. These were named after the government official who proposed them. The Townshend Acts set taxes on glass, tea, lead, paints, and paper imported into the colonies. The American colonists rejected the Townshend Acts and started a new boycott of British goods. They also took steps to increase manufacturing in the colonies. By the end of 1769, they had reduced by half the amount of goods imported from Britain. The colonies also began to communicate with each other about their problems. In 1768, the Massachusetts General Court sent a letter to the legislatures of the other colonies. It said the Townshend Acts violated the colonists' natural and constitutional rights. When news of the letter reached London, British officials ordered the colonial governor of Massachusetts to dismiss the legislature. Then they moved 4,000 British troops into Boston, the biggest city in Massachusetts and the biggest city in the American colonies. The people of Boston hated the British soldiers. The soldiers were controlling their streets and living in their houses. This tension led to violence.
And that's our program for today. Listen again tomorrow to learn English through stories from around the world. I'm Jonathan Evans.
And I'm Ashley Thompson.